Welcome back to the End Time Remnant YouTube channel. This is Dorothy, and today is June 25th, 2025. It is about 5:20 p.m., and I know it's been quite a while since I posted content to the channel, so this video is just catching you up on where I've been, what I've been up to, and how the Lord has been moving in my life over these past few weeks. Before I go any further, I just want to let you know that I'm currently on auntie duty. My two favorite little people are in town, so if you hear their voices in the background, please excuse me. I'm going to do my very best to make sure the audio on this video is as clear as possible, but they are young, so expect just about anything. So since the last time I posted content, I celebrated my 45th birthday. And to be honest with you, while I planned all of the events around my birthday to the T, everything didn't necessarily go quite as planned. But in retrospect, I recognized that Romans 8:28 was in full effect. All things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purposes. And there was blessing even in the perceived disorder and chaos. So where do I begin? This year, the theme for my birthday was more of like a homecoming, right? So I wanted all of the planned events to be in New York City. Fun fact, I was born on June 15th, 1980, and so I was actually born on Father's Day. And so every few years, I get to share the spotlight with my dad because my birthday will fall on Father's Day, and so that's what it was this particular year. So all the plans that I had, I made sure that they were up north because that's where my dad lives. But I realized that after all these years, growing up in New York, spending a lot of time in New York, that there are various parts of New York City that I've never experienced. So I wanted to do New York City, but more from like a touristy standpoint, versus the typical visit that only involves going to the places that I'm familiar with. I wanted to kind of step outside the box and step outside my comfort zone and finally get to see some of the places that I've literally never seen. So first on the list was a trip to a place called Untermeyer Gardens, located in Yonkers. It's a garden located on just really well-kept grounds, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And for as many times as I have been to Yonkers, I never even knew it existed until recently. So I went there. I spent some time alone there, just taking in the sights, enjoying the garden, and definitely enjoying the perfect weather on that morning. I got there when it opened around 9 a.m., so it wasn't crowded at all. It was just a perfect weather, perfect time. It set everything off, and I was just really glad that I had an opportunity to go. After I left the garden, I decided to go and visit one of my aunts that I haven't seen in a while. When I'm in the city, I try my best to link up with the elders in my family. I never want to take life for granted, not mine or theirs. Everyone is getting older, and I just feel like it's important to visit whenever the opportunity presents itself. So I had a chance to spend some time with my mother's older sister, and afterward I headed to my dad's house. He lives in East Harlem. So I changed my clothes, and I wasn't there for too long before I was headed on a solo journey to my next destination, which was Roosevelt Island. For as many times as I have visited New York City, I have always wanted to take the tram over to Roosevelt Island, but I never made the time to do it. So on that day, I made sure to get that done. The tram ride in itself was interesting, and at first I was a little scared, I'm not even gonna lie. But I decided to just relax, and enjoy the ride over. Once I got to Roosevelt Island, I headed to a hotel called the Graduate Hotel, and they have a rooftop lounge called the Panorama Room. So I went up there, I ordered my $14 mocktail, and enjoyed the view. And may I just say, they really had a lot of nerve charging me $14 for like strawberry syrup, pineapple juice, and tonic water, and a mint leaf. I'm like, y'all are really out here robbing people blind. Like, seriously. But while I was up there on the rooftop, I took a little bit of time to just take in the sights of the New York City skyline and just enjoy the experience. That's what I was over there to do, to finally do something that I had wanted to do for years but never got around to doing, and it was nice. After that, I got back on the tram, headed back over, and went back to my dad's house. What was going on the following day? So the following day was Friday. And that was quite the adventure. My dad and I headed to the South Street Seaport, and we got a ferry over to Dumbo, Brooklyn. We walked around a bit. We wanted to check out the Manhattan Bridge Lookout. And then we actually headed back to Manhattan by way of walking back across the Brooklyn Bridge. So we took the ferry to Brooklyn, and then we walked back across the bridge over back to Manhattan. That day was kind of hot, but it was a great time, and I was blessed to be able to share those moments and memories with my dad. The following day was a Saturday, and I'd signed up my dad, my sister, and myself to go volunteer and feed the homeless breakfast at a place that I like to volunteer, which is called the Bowery Mission. It's located downtown New York. And our shift began at 7 a.m., so we were all up very early that morning. My father and I headed out around 6 a.m. and got a local bus downtown. And we arrived at the Bowery Mission and got to work. You know, overall, it was a beautiful experience. It always is. I love volunteering there. And I would highly recommend it for those of you who live in the tri-state area. If you want to, really give of yourself, give of your time to an amazing organization, I would suggest that. We had a really beautiful experience, and I was happy to see my dad so excited to serve as well. Again, this wasn't my first time, and it actually wasn't my sister's first time either, but it was my dad's. And so it was just nice to see him in that environment and see, just how engaged he was. Later that evening, I had made a dinner reservation at a restaurant called the Hunt and Fish Club. And I'd done my research and kind of zeroed in on that location because the reviews were great. The location was perfect. And it just seemed like a really cool place to celebrate both my birthday and Father's Day. People were raving about not just the food, but the customer service there. So I thought it would be cool to experience. Dinner was delicious. I'll tell you how delicious it was. You won't see any pictures of the food because as soon as it came, we ate it. You know how normally people stop and they start taking pictures of their plates? Yeah. So there was nothing to take a picture of other than like sauce left on the plate. Like the food was amazing. I just really enjoyed my meal there. And they actually offered my dad and I on the house desserts. So they gave my dad a chocolate cake and then they gave me a New York cheesecake. Both were absolutely delicious. So I think if I had to sum up this place, I would say the customer service was amazing, and I would definitely recommend this establishment wholeheartedly if you're ever in New York City looking for a new place to dine for a special occasion. They were a little pricey, but worth every dime. Technically, my birthday and Father's Day was not until Sunday the 15th, but the restaurant was going to be closed that Sunday, so we dined there on the 14th, which was the night before. And so that brings us to Sunday, my actual birthday, June 15th. Where do I begin? Okay. I woke up that morning super excited to ring in my 45th birthday. I did not know what the day would hold, but I really was expecting all things beautiful. I'd made plans for my immediate family and I to do bike riding in Central Park and to also do the rowboats that are located there in the park as well. However, the weather was unseasonably cold and rainy. So off the back, my plans were thrown off completely for June 15th, which annoyed me. Okay, I don't like it when my plans are altered. I just don't. I'm just being honest. And in the days leading up to my birthday, I'd prayed fervently that the Lord would bless my day and make it special. But in retrospect, I realized I'd planned everything to the T. So to ask him to make it special after I'd planned every event down to the minute actually didn't make too much sense. Like what I was really asking him to do was get in where he could fit in, right? And in retrospect, he did, but just not the way I expected at all. Again, sometimes blessings actually first look like disaster, right? It looks like breakdowns that kind of lead to breakthrough. So here we go. The first thing that those of you who are not familiar with New York City need to know is that it's a zoo. It's a zoo. The street parking rules are enough to make you want to literally not have a car. okay, and choose to take public transportation everywhere you go. It's just not a welcoming environment for car owners. And it just seems like it gets worse and worse with every passing year. So on Thursday, when I arrived in the city, I was able to find street parking, but I actually needed to move my car before 7 a.m. the following day to avoid a ticket because I was parked in a zone that was only accessible to teachers from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. during the week. So I got up early on Friday morning and I moved my car, no problem. I'm very familiar with the parking situation around my dad's block. I was outside so early that morning that I was actually able to find parking in front of my dad's building. And as a parked car was pulling out, I pulled in. I didn't see any signage that said no parking or signage that would kind of lead me to believe that that particular parking spot was not valid, right? Again, as a car pulled out, I pulled in. So someone was already there, which made me think, okay, if he is not he doesn't have a ticket and he just pulled out of this parking spot, then you should be straight. That's what I was thinking. But I wasn't sure. So I video chatted my dad and I asked him if the spot I was parked in was legal. I thought it was, but I wanted to be sure. And he told me that I was fine, and he asked if I saw any signage that said differently, and I told him no. So I left the car there. Just as I entered his building, I asked the security guard standing outside if my car was an illegal parking spot, and I pointed to my car, which was right in front of us across the street. I told him it was the white car, and he was like, oh yeah. He was like, you're fine. So with confidence, I entered my dad's building, and I headed upstairs, and we got our day started. A few hours later, when my dad and I left his apartment building to do our little adventure in Brooklyn, I looked and there was no ticket on my car. The following morning, when we went to go volunteer at the Bowery Mission, I looked and there was no ticket on my car. But on Sunday morning, June 15th, my birthday and Father's Day, okay, my dad and I exit his apartment building and we're headed to New Jersey to visit my brother, who was hosting a family dinner since my Central Park plans were ruined by the weather. As I get near my vehicle, right, so we come out of his apartment building. As I get near my vehicle, I can see an orange ticket on my windshield. Anybody from New York knows exactly what that is, okay, from far away. Okay, you get the Cyclops vision when you see one of these bright fluorescent orange situations on the top of your car. You already know what it is. So I grab the ticket, I look at it, and I could immediately feel myself getting angry. Apparently, I was parked in what they call a safety zone, quote unquote safety zone, right? A zone that's not marked, a zone that's not identified, but it is a quote unquote safety zone according to them. A zone that didn't warrant a ticket on Friday or Saturday, but early Sunday morning. You know what I mean? So I guess it's just a safety zone on Sunday mornings. I just felt like the ticket was unfair and it made no sense. Like, if I was in a safety zone, then I was in a safety zone from Friday. And so I should have had a ticket on Friday. Like, it was just weird. And I just kind of felt like, devil, I see you. You know what I mean? I feel like you're trying to make my birthday whack. I feel like you're trying to upset me. And I just wasn't having it. So I said a quiet prayer, and I just thanked the Lord for making a way for me to pay the ticket. The ticket was $115. So my dad and I get into my car, and I go to turn on the ignition. I immediately heard the loudest sound I'd ever heard come from my car. It's so hard to explain, but it was loud and it was jarring. And my dad said to me, turn the car off and restart it. So I did. Okay. Same thing. As soon as I start the car, I immediately hear that sound again. And so now I'm upset. Because while I don't know what is specifically happening to my car, I knew it was very serious and it would not be a cheap fix. I could tell right away that something was really wrong. So I moved my car from that parking spot and noticed that as I pulled away from that parking spot, my car was driving, but it had no real power. So I turned down another block, and I parked along a street that actually had signage that let me know that that parking area was perfectly okay. Once I parked the car, I just kind of sat still in the driver's seat, really trying to gather myself, right? Because here I was on my birthday. It wasn't even 10 a.m. yet, and I had a ticket and a major issue with my car, right? Both would require money I didn't have. So in my mind, here I am, 45 years old, but very much in the same situation I've been in for years now, dependent, whether on God or the vessels he uses to bless me, dependent. And in that moment, I realized how sick of being in this space I really was. I was just absolutely disgusted. So the tears start falling. And my dad says to me, well, I guess we're not driving to New Jersey. We'll just take the train. And so I wipe my face and I turn to him and I ask, well, what makes you think I want to go all the way out to New Jersey now? And he says, we will deal with the car tomorrow, right? Today is our day and we aren't spending it sulking around and being upset. He was like, we can't control what happened, but we can control how we react to what happened. He said, we're going to get an Uber to Penn Station and we're going to head out to New Jersey and we're going to enjoy our day the way we planned. He was like, let's go. So I'm wiping my tears, and truth be told, I wasn't feeling it at all. You know, I recognized that it was not just my birthday. It was also Father's Day, and I knew that he likely wanted to see his son, my brother, and he wanted to see his grandchildren, and I couldn't be selfish, you know. So we get to Penn Station, and my attitude is ripe. Okay, I'm just on a completely other level of disgust, and I'm not about to clean up this testimony in order for it to seem super spiritual, right? I was upset, and I was upset at God. I was tired of feeling like he was intentionally allowing these types of financial challenges to arise just to see me worry and squirm. You know what I mean? That's how I was feeling. Like, let me dip her into some hot water again and see how she deals with it. I was just tired of the testing, because that's what it all has been feeling like lately. I mean, for those of you who follow this channel, just last month, I'm in front of a judge who legit called me broke because I couldn't afford to pay the ticket. Like, seriously, how many more situations of this nature? You know, how are you glorified by me not having my own dough? I was just really starting to feel some type of way, all right? So while we're there in Penn Station waiting for our train, my dad says to me, why is your face like that? Get yourself together, Dorothy. He says, I'm your dad and I'm not rich, but I'm not going to see you fall. We will figure out what's going on with the car tomorrow. Today, stay present and focus on the blessings all around you. He was like, weren't we just serving the homeless breakfast yesterday? Did you see how many of them stood out in the rain waiting for a meal? Did you see the smiles on some of their faces, even in their circumstances? It's like, I'm not saying I don't understand why you're upset, but I'm telling you that you have a choice today. You can choose to surrender to the reality that God is in control and you have nothing to worry about, or you can choose to be upset for the rest of your day. And then he says, and mind you, my dad is not saved. One of the things I have learned to do is hear the voice of the Lord through any vessel he uses, right? So from me to you, I just want you to know, God can speak to you through anyone. So don't miss the voice of God just because you feel like it has to be somebody's pastor or somebody's prophet or prophetess speaking to you. Sometimes the Lord will speak through people who are not yet saved. And I guarantee you, I knew for fact the Lord was speaking through my dad. Out of nowhere, my dad says, do you remember when the Bible says the disciples were in the boat afraid of the storm and Jesus was sleeping or something like that? And Jesus asked them why they were afraid, like why they had such little faith. Well, Jesus was probably annoyed with them. And the same way he was annoyed with them for their lack of faith, I'm starting to get annoyed with you. I told you that regardless of what was going on with your car, I got you. Rest in that and let's enjoy our day. So I'm standing in Penn Station and I'm like, whoa. Like, my dad's not saved and he has read the Bible. But I just thought it was really interesting, that choice of word and like that biblical story, because it was more than applicable, right? What he was saying in a nutshell is, I told you I got you. My word has not been enough, right? And here you are sulking still, right? When you really don't have to. You really don't have to. So our train came, me, him, and my sister, and she'd met us at Penn Station. We got on the train and we headed to my brother's house. The remainder of the day was absolutely blessed. My brother made the most amazing dinner for us. His children presented me with the most adorable present, hugs and kisses, and we just really rocked out and enjoyed family time for the rest of the day. And I thank God for that. Later that night, my dad and I headed back to New York City on the train, and my sister went back home to Maryland. The following day, my dad and I were awake, ready to hit the pavement early, and I'd done some research and found a reputable local mechanic, and so we took my car to them. We dropped the car off and went back home to wait for a call that would basically explain what they'd found by doing a diagnostic. A few hours later, I get a call from the mechanic, and what he tells me next, let's just say I'm glad I was already sitting down, okay? The mechanic asked me if he could send me a picture. This is the picture. When the picture came through, he explained what I was looking at, okay? Apparently, someone went underneath my car and literally stole my catalytic converter. The picture I was looking at showed that it was completely missing. Not broken or malfunctioning, but missing. And so I asked the mechanic, why would someone want to steal a catalytic converter? And he explained to me that it's not necessarily the catalytic converter that they're after, but the precious metals inside of the catalytic converter that can go for thousands of dollars. So then the mechanic quotes almost $4,000 to get it replaced. And he explains to me that in the state of New York, I had to get a certain type of catalytic converter that was in compliance with the emission state laws. Okay, I could literally feel my blood boiling. And I knew the cost to fix the car would be expensive, but 4 stacks just wasn't even on my mind. Okay, $4,000 is a lot of money. I immediately thanked the mechanic and told him we'd be picking up the car and we wouldn't be using their services. After I got off the phone, I explained everything to my dad, and I told him that there was no need to spend that type of money on my used car. I mean, my car is a 2007 Acura, right? Which means it's almost 20 years old. And I cannot complain about that vehicle. That vehicle is bossed up, and it has taken me from one end of this country to the other. I do not have any complaints. That car owes me nothing. But it just didn't feel wise to dump 4 stacks into a car that's almost 20 years old. And I told my dad that, I'm willing to give up the car and just head back home on the bus. Like, I was just disgusted. I was just so disgusted. However, okay, my dad is a man of great wisdom, and he had the ability to understand that the words coming out of my mouth were from a place of emotion and not logic. Like, I needed a vehicle in order to maintain my independence, and he saw the bigger picture. When all I saw was just one more thing being taken from me. All I saw was just one more trial, one more test, you know what I mean? One more situation in which I'm put between a rock and a hard place. And I just gotten to a point where I was just really tired of caring, okay? I was just really, again, I'm going to use the word, disgusted, okay? So my dad told me to relax. He told me to do some research and remember that the quote we had received was literally just one quote from one place. Their price wasn't necessarily everyone else's price, so just breathe and do some research. So for the next few hours, I sat and I did the research. I called around to various mechanics in New Jersey because it became very clear to me that getting my car fixed outside of the state of New York absolved me of having to purchase the more expensive state-compliant catalytic converter. Hopefully I'm not losing you. If I got my car fixed in another state, then I didn't have to buy the more expensive catalytic converter. So literally just crossing the George Washington Bridge would save me thousands, plural, of dollars. So I called a mechanic located in Fort Lee, New Jersey, which is literally right near the George Washington Bridge, and he quoted me $1,400 for the parts and the labor. The reviews for this place were stellar, and he offered to come tow my car from East Harlem to Fort Lee. So my dad spoke to him, and in no time, they agreed to get the ball moving on it. I then called the first mechanic back, and I told him my car would be towed to New Jersey, and I asked him how much we owed for the initial diagnostic. Interestingly enough, he told me it was free of charge. He was like, no problem. And I thanked him for his help, and I told him that my dad and I would be there shortly to meet up with the gentleman who was bringing the tow truck from the other mechanic spot. My car was towed to New Jersey, and for the next couple of days or so, they worked on my vehicle. And for most people, that would be the end of it. right? $4,000 came down to $1,400, and you shouldn't have anything to say to God other than thank you, Jesus, right? Prayers of thanksgiving should be going up. Hallelujahs should be going up. And you should just forget about what happened because God came through for you. Yeah, but not me. Not me. There was something bubbling up to the surface. Something very ugly, something nasty, and something bitter. Okay? Having just turned 45 years old, I wanted to be in a position to take care of myself. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to be self-sufficient. And the fact that something of this nature happened so close to my birthday, it was a reminder that while I was another year older, I was far from a grown-up, right? 45, but I felt like a child, a little dependent child. And in the depths of my soul, family, I was just absolutely disgusted. Okay? Again, I'm not going to sugarcoat this testimony because it can't be in order for you to really understand what the Lord has done. So I spent the next couple of days at my dad's house literally stewing in pride. Okay, that spirit had me in an absolute chokehold, and I found myself not really wanting to pray. I was constantly eating all types of bad food. My attitude was just absolutely stank. It was just foul. I felt like, other than thank you, I had nothing left to say to God. I just didn't get why he allowed this. I didn't understand why at 45 my life looked absolutely nothing like what I'd pictured it would. And it was just a really tough pill to swallow. Period. Period. I'm actually going to end this video here because I don't like for these videos to be too long, but I will definitely pick up where I am leaving off in the next video because this story is far from over. But just remember this. Breakthroughs are almost always preceded by a breakdown in whatever foundational truths you've built that no longer serve you. And so I asked for the Lord to bless me real good on my 45th birthday. And he did. It just didn't feel or look like it at first.